Oh yeah, Steven, that's good. Good stuff. Look at this. All right. I know there's always a few second delay. Live on Facebook. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is our 49th jam session. We are excited because when we started these, it literally was a jam session, meaning we were figuring out the pandemic and everybody's like, what's working, what's not working. And it was just a free flowing conversation. But this one, we actually have a topic, which is the PLN. So not everybody wants to hear me give introduction. So I'm going to dive right in. First of all, I want to acknowledge Realtors Partners. Thanks for carving the hour out for this. I mean, this is something that people do just to connect with one another, solidify relationships. I mean, people aren't getting paid for this. I mean, they're taking their time out of their busy schedules to sharpen one another. I'm a big believer that high tide raises all ships. I think that's in Proverbs somewhere, but it is very true. And it just helps everybody get along in a super competitive, I mean, some people would say real estate is cutthroat. The people that I get to connect with aren't. I mean, they're extremely collaborative. They want to help scratch each other's backs. And so got some awesome realtors on here, obviously awesome partners. And so Danielle, if you would be so kind, please kick us off.
Hi, thanks for having us, Andy. I'm Danielle Dowell. I'm with Berkshire Hathaway. I am the leader of the Dowell Group. We're a 10-person team. We do most of our business in the city, and we do have 3 agents in the suburbs. And I'm excited to chat today. So.
I think you're next, Phil. I think people already forgot their order, but it's all good.
Oh, it's me next? Oh, I'm so sorry. Phil Byers, Compass, real estate agent, 18 years, doing the thing with all of you. Always excited to talk to talented colleagues. So, and Andy, of course, as always, thanks for organizing and putting us all in the same virtual room.
It is a pleasure.
I think I'm next. Mark Zipperer, Remax next. I've been an agent since the Mayflower pulled up to Navy Pier. Living the dream. And I lead a very small team that we are calling ourselves the Zip Group. And I'm just taking it day by day.
Since the Mayflower. My name is Stephen Hnatow. I'm with Keller Williams One Chicago. I am a part of Stephen and Ryan with my business partner, Ryan Douglas Wells. I have been in business. This will be my 14th year.
And I am Ryan McKane. I'm with Redfin. I've been in real estate for 17 years. Got my start in residential as both a broker and a mortgage broker. Got into commercial for 4 years, and then I've been back in residential for about 6 years.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And as like I say, realtors love what we do. In fact, God willing, because I was called out earlier when we were pre-gaming with events, and I'm glad people's comfort levels are getting, it's like the cliche, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I genuinely think that that's the appropriate term here, because I think people are ready to get out there and chat. It's like Zoom and electronic and zeros and ones. It's like, there's nothing like in person, having a drink, cutting loose, eating. We just have to be safe about it. So I've heard the phrase, walk before you run. I mean, I would take that a step further and say, let's crawl before we walk. And so what I would love to do is have the partners introduce themselves, just because I cannot do what I do without our partners and support, and just people who want to support our platform and the real estate community in general. One thing that I will say, plug fast before I have the partners introduce themselves. And actually the partners, the DigiPub app is brought to you by Michelle Bobart. You didn't even know this, Michelle, but you brought us this app today with Guaranteed Rate, Kristine Pokrandt with Goosehead Insurance, and Justin Strane with Shapiro Strane. And so people ask me all the time, do you guys have a digital version? I'm like, of course we do. It's 2021. However, if you give a 90-page high-resolution PDF to a realtor who's doing 10, 20, 30 plus $1 million in real estate, they're not going to sit there and read it on their phone. They're too busy for that. So we actually have a way you can download all of the past issues all of the, I mean, there's event videos on there. And I'm actually thinking of doing an archive maybe with all of uploading, because all the jam sessions are on YouTube. I don't think anybody ever looks at them because we do them live, but I'm thinking of doing like an archive, like where we were at a year ago. I just think that would be cool, and putting them and having them linked to the app. So that would just be kind of a fun little thing from like where we came and, you know, what we figured stuff out a year ago. So if you want all the past issues, download the app. It's currently free. They'll probably start charging for it eventually, but if you have it on your phone, you'll be grandfathered in. So that is my only plug I'm going to give. I'm going to allow the partners to introduce themselves, and then we're going to start rapping about the PLN. So Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Michelle Bobart, Guaranteed Rate. I've been in the mortgage banking world for about 24 years, running my team out of our downtown River North office. A pleasure to be here, and always fantastic to collaborate with all of my Chicagoland partners. So thanks for letting me join.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kristine Pokrandt. I am an insurance agency owner with Goosehead Insurance, and we specialize in the real estate space. So my business is built to support home buyers. So I love connecting with other professionals in that real estate space and learning from your breadth of expertise. Looking forward to it.
Hey everyone, Justin Strane with Shapiro Strane. I'm the transactions attorney in the group, so working of course on residential closings and also helping small business owners close on their purchases and sales and get new leases in place as well. Been doing this about 10 years now, and just, yeah, looking forward to chatting with everyone this morning.
Thank you, Justin. And just to kick this off, we started these are branded as jam sessions, but we actually have a topic that usually comes up. It usually surfaces on almost every jam session. So I'm very thankful. I got to give Mark Zipperer a shout out, because Mark, this is technically your idea. You know, as much as I would love to hog all the glory for it, I mean, this is your baby. So why don't we, if you don't mind, sir, why don't we jump in, define the PLN, what it is, and then maybe some misconceptions about it, and then we'll just dive into pros and cons. And so I am gonna more than likely be quiet for the next 48 minutes or so. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Andy, I brought this topic up because I think that there's a good amount of frustration in the realtor community about it. And then also the general public, I don't think they understand it. So I find myself in the market that we're in, and, you know, there's always a turbulent market. You know, we never seem to have like a level market where we can all rest. It's either feast or famine. And so I find myself explaining what the PLN is to clients. And honestly, I kind of look at their face and I'm like, I can tell they're like, really? They're like, what? All right. They don't really get it. And sometimes I don't get the value of it. I have done a little research, watching, you know, various chat boards to figure out a value for my buyers or my sellers, and I'm still left not really getting it. Essentially, the private listing network, to me, and, you know, anyone can add to it, but it's a spot that is accessible only to realtors, not to the general public, because the listing data does not syndicate to sites like Zillow and Redfin or other real estate websites. It's essentially, I think it was built for coming soon. Owners might be doing some repairs and they want to generate some excitement for a listing. It could be for instance, if you want to list a Kardashian house and they don't want you to know it's on the market. But, you know, in Chicago, we don't have many celebrities. So there's that, or maybe to test a price. And so those are, you know, some of the reasons that are out there. Now, in the past, it's been kind of difficult to manage the PLN, because if we as realtors representing buyers wanted to send a listing from the PLN to a client, we really had to go through some hoops of downloading photos, and, you know, and all the data is not there. So then if they ask questions like, gosh, I don't know, you know, I've got to reach out to the other agent. And so it was a lot of extra work. And these days, when we are all well, I assume this is the case, but you know, it is a seller's market in most cases, and we're trying to find properties for buyers that are frustrated. And when we have, you know, realtors, I think, are about efficiency. You know, we built the MLS and or whatever other technology we use for like efficiency. You know, we're all geared toward like working on a checklist and moving forward. There's mine for this morning. Okay, so I need to move through that checklist as quickly as possible. And if I have to screw around downloading photos and sending questions to the listing agent, sorry, I'm a little frustrated. I've got to move stuff through. I want to serve clients and be as efficient as possible. So, you know, and then there's some oddities, I think, about the PLN. A rental listing on the PLN? What? What are we doing? Who's monitoring this? Or I can think of one example where one of my clients is targeting a building in Lakeview, and I emailed the agent, and the agent said, oh no, he's taking it off the market. 6 months later, it's still there. Okay, so, you know, we need some of that. I think we now have the ability to sort of bring that to the MRED's attention and clean up the data. But one of the good things is that, and I think that this has been solved within the last 3 to 4 weeks, MRED has decided to change the search function and the ability to share data on the PLM with clients. And I say that, you know, I feel like my frustration level has gone down. I can at least cut some of my research time down, but I still don't get it. Personally, would I want and I just wonder about realtors on this ability to share data on the PLM with the clients. And I say, but I still don't get it. Personally, would I want and I just wonder about realtors on this ability to share data on the PLM with the clients. And
Someone watching it on Facebook.
But I still don't get it. Personally, would I want and I just wonder about realtors on facility to share data on the deal. What was that?
Somebody was watching it on Facebook,
Was
or had maybe their thing in the background. Could I ask a question about the PLN and forgive my, I guess, not knowing this. I mean, I feel like there was, you know, before the PLN and now we have the PLN. When did the PLN come out? Because I think I ignored it for a little while. When was this? What are we talking about? Last couple of years, right?
I would say it was like 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. And do you guys feel this way too, that it's just within almost COVID times that it's become like a much more major thing than it was before? Do you guys feel that way too? Or again, was I just ignoring it?
I'd agree.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I think it's a little bit more than just COVID. I think it's also ties into various brokerages trying to find ways to increase profitability through driving traffic to apps or websites for exclusive listings. So it's like a combination of both. So the two merged together and kind of created like this vacuum, I think.
I get that, but you know, for especially realtors on this call, would you list your own property on private network?
No.
Or would you rather have it on the regular MLS and have as many interested parties as possible? And making firms profitable, I mean, that's a whole separate discussion. To me, it's about serving clients.
Correct.
So I think that you have to explain the pros and cons to your seller, and you have to let them make the decision. What we do, I don't think it's our decision to make decisions for others. Our decision is to let them know the facts and to explain to them, and then they get to make the decision. And for some people on the PLN, it's one of those deals of they know what they want value-wise, and they may not, especially with COVID, I had a lot of people that didn't want a ton of people in the home. They weren't ready to go on to the MLS, you know, and so that's why we put them onto some of these private networks, not because we weren't in front of everyone. And I tell them what the pros and cons are, because there is a pro of being in front of everyone, but also there could be con. I still think sometimes too, and I don't know who would agree with me or not on this, but when people offer scenarios over and over again as a buyer, and you can find something off the market that nobody else has an offer in, I can't, there's no data to prove this, but I feel like sometimes a buyer may pay more actually off market for something like that than they would on the market with other offers.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I agree. Explaining the pros and cons. I think the thing I just put something on the PLN. This is not going to make any sense. I did it on Sunday, so just don't laugh. My client really loved the idea of putting it up on Mother's Day, so we all know what a difference that made. No difference, and actually that's a good segue into the point I want to make, that I've come into listing appointments recently with, this is a house that's, $1.6 million we listed it for. And I walked in the door and they were asking me about the PLN, and they're calling it PLN. Like they know the acronym.
Yeah.
Yep.
We may have done, although I don't know if I agree with this or not, but I'm not sure if we've done ourselves a disservice or not, or if it really matters. I think as time's gone on, I've started to go kind of maybe what Mark was saying. I've certainly talked to Stephen about this before. I'm not like mad at the PLN. I'm curious if you guys have a lot of energy about it or are really angry about it, but it just feels to me now like an extra step that I don't necessarily need. But if a client wants it because they're very excited at the idea of telling their friends they sold it off market privately or whatever the thing is, then okay, I'm down with it, whatever. And I guess, I don't know, questions maybe I'll throw out to you guys. I mean, aside from the obvious, celebrity, which, I mean, we're all sitting here, all of us together have probably worked with half a dozen celebrities or sports stars. And if somebody might be sitting there thinking, no, bro, I work with all the basketball players. Okay, congratulations. But we all know that that's not a very common thing, right? Outside of that, is there any strategy other than your client just likes it better, which I'm down with? I just say yes, that the PLN gives you an advantage. I'm curious to hear about from everyone.
I saw something recently, actually a couple different brokers were doing social media stories on the PLN, and the way that they were positioning the education. So now you answer your question, why do consumers even know what the PLN is? People are talking about it. Other brokers are talking about it. But the second thing is they were positioning it as, if we sell through the PLN, we will be guaranteed to be dealing with brokers on both ends of the contract that are not messing around. So they're top performing brokers rather than dealing with maybe new brokers who don't know what they're doing. So I think they're positioning it as an expertise strategy. And I, on the insurance end, I don't know if there's any validity to that.
I would, can only speak from my experience, but I'm just trying to think of what I have on the market now on the PLN. And to your point, you do tend to get a more serious buyer, and I don't want to say it this way, but I'll say it anyway. You do get a more experienced agent when you do have a home on the PLN. Not always, but for example, I have a listing on Irving Park right now where they had not found their next home to purchase. They're looking out in the suburbs, and they were thinking of listing. They kept going back and forth. They were worried about selling too quickly, then having nowhere to live. And I went through the whole scenario with them, and you could do a lease back, so on and so forth. They decided at the last minute not to list because the home that they wanted got bought from underneath them. Well, then their neighbor across the street went on the market and sold first weekend. So of course they thought, okay, well, we should really get on the market. But we just aren't ready to fully commit. So I said, let's go on the PLN. At least you could start generating some prospects, start getting some interest. And then when you do find a home, you may already have a buyer all ready to go. So that way you're not waiting. Well, sure enough, the first day on the PLN, we got an offer, and it was with a broker that I've done a lot of deals with, and she's a good friend of mine. But it was very much that she's very experienced. There was no real games or anything like that. They got all the terms that they wanted. They're happy. I'm happy. So I would say it is kind of almost like a barrier to entry. Yeah, and just to use another example, I just got a new buyer over the weekend who's actually a friend of mine, and shame on him for not using me to begin with, but he's looking out in the suburbs, didn't think I worked out there, but he was working with an agent before that she was referred to him. He didn't really know much about her, and she's probably a great agent. I don't want to disparage anybody, but when he kept telling me that his biggest frustration was everything that they're looking at is going under contract real quickly. I said, well, that's nationwide right now. That's the market. I said, has she sent you anything that's on the private listing network or the PLN? He had no idea what I was talking about. So, it is kind of a barrier to entry, and kind of something that will, we'll kind of more than likely have you work with somebody who's a little bit more experienced and has a little bit more expertise.
Just want to clarify something for the general public that's watching. The PLN is available to every real estate agent in the Chicagoland area. It is not something that is exclusive to established agents. It is not something that is exclusive to good agents, knowledgeable agents. It is just a new aspect of a platform that we've used for decades. I think that is the clarification that needs to be said. I also feel like, I don't know if it's so much of a barrier as more so the distinguishing factor between an agent that practices regularly and an agent that practices occasionally. So the individual that's maybe doing 1 or 2 transactions a year may not know that so many people are putting stuff on the PLN. I don't think it really truly has anything to do with experience, because I did a deal right now with someone who's been licensed for 25 years, but he's only doing like 2 deals a year. So in respects, when I get an inspection letter that runs out of letters in the alphabet, where it's like now doing AA, BB on inspection items, I start thinking, are we in the same market right now? Like, what are you doing? But I think that's just the biggest clarification that I just want to make sure everyone understands is the PLN on the MLS and on MRED was established so that there was no exclusivity anymore, so that there was fair housing opportunities for everyone. It should not be something that is limited opportunities for a select few that have access.
I mean, the word private is problematic, right?
Correct. Remember how like even 5 years ago, you couldn't even have private outdoor space in remarks.
Yeah.
Like that was no go. Like you were flagged immediately. It needed to be changed, the wording. And now suddenly it's, oh, we're okay with you can have private listings, but you can't have private outdoor space in remarks.
Private
like it just like we literally flipped it on its head and we're like, what's going on?
So when I think of all of this, I think kind of what you said right now, it's definitely more of a seller's market. And so right now, the PLN and off market really, in my personal opinion, is something attractive to sellers and something that helps them. If you're on the buy side right now, not as attractive, doesn't really help as much, adds additional work and detail, not only to the client, but to the agent. And I think a lot of buyers get frustrated because they think it's harder for them to search. And they want to know, well, why didn't you see this? Or how did this not come in? I think that's where the agents have the frustration with the PLN, to be honest with you. It depends on what side of the transaction you're on, in my personal opinion, because we do a lot of buy side or a lot of sell side. And I know from a seller perspective, I think that there's definitely benefits to my sellers of having these programs. I don't know necessarily if there are benefits to the buyers, to be honest with you. And that's how I kind of see it. So if something changes and it becomes more of a buyer's market, then I think we wouldn't be having the same conversation right now.
So my question for everyone is, I feel like you can sit there and say, yes, you're going to weigh the pros and cons to each client. Kind of what Danielle was articulating earlier. There's pros of being on the PLN, there's cons of being on the PLN. At what point do you start advising? And at what point do you let the client decide? Because I look at it like, you can look at it from a micro aspect of it's what's in the best interest of the client, or you can look at it as a macro aspect of what is in the best interest of the overall population. We're walking into a year with the lowest amount of inventory on record ever. And if we're kind of dangling this carrot in front of sellers saying like, hey, like there's this opportunity where you're on the PLN, you may not get the highest price, but it'll have less people in. And we're doing it because leadership on some certain level has kind of promoted it in such a way. Like, yes, it's in service of the client, but
What leadership, Stephen? What are you talking about?
Well, like, I feel like, let's put it this way. All these agents didn't suddenly decide to sign their listings and immediately put it on the PLN before they go on the MLS. At some point, someone was given direction to, as soon as you sign the paperwork, put it in the PLN, get your photos ready, and then put it in the MLS. Whereas in prior years was sign the listing agreement, sign the exemption form that it's not going to be input into the MLS until such and such date. And that's how it was. But somewhere I feel like the process changed. And I just feel like if it's an agent-wide community, when did all the agents decide to do it this way? Like someone had to have given instruction on some form of level. And I would just think it would have to be leadership in some capacity. Like I just can't imagine like it just happened.
I mean, I've been at 2 brokerages in the last 4 or 5 years, and I've not heard anybody at either of those brokerages ever encourage me one way or the other.
I have not either.
I could say this, and I'm by no means pointing the finger or anything, because to me, it's not I don't think this is a cause. I think it's just kind of, it might just be a byproduct of the market or what have you. But I know with the advent of Zenlist, that when that started coming around, I would walk into a listing appointment and I had sellers that were asking me if we were on there, and I to be quite honest, I would just tell them like, I don't even know what that is. In fact, I told one seller, I said, Zenlist, I go, I've never heard of it. I said, I could probably also put your home on MySpace and Friendster and a whole bunch of other websites nobody goes on too, if you want. And then I started to learn more about it. And but I think just with the low inventory, just people were starting to get trying to get creative with ways to promote their listings and ways to try to have like some sort of advantage over the competition. Whether or not that's harmful to consumers or not, that remains to be seen. But I just know that within the last year and a half, that's when I started to see it become more commonplace.
Well, I think too, you're also like, if you think about it, there's other platforms that we're not speaking about, like you're on your own social media, you can post anything that you have coming up. You can go on Zillow and post a home before it comes to market. I think Redfin, you guys had an option of a coming soon that was before.
Coming soon. It has to be listed on the PLN though, in order to do that.
But there's other places that have these where it doesn't have to be listed on PLN, and there's no way, right, I think, for us to ever control that. So, right?
That's actually not true. It has to always be on the PLN before it goes anywhere else.
Oh, is that the rule now?
Yep.
When was that rule implemented?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's been implemented for a while. And that's the thing is, I think and here's the thing is, maybe it's not leadership that is given direction. Maybe it's a lack of leadership. Maybe it's a lack of clear direction. It cannot be posted anywhere if it's not on the market. It has to be on the PLN.
Yeah.
So like, you're not supposed to be essentially posting on social media that I have a coming soon listing if it's not on the PLN. Like that is the golden rule right now.
And that, I think, brings us to why, I mean, I know that some people have really strong feelings about how dumb the PLN is. I get that. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I'm more interested on why people are so upset about it. And I wanted to bring up another just question that's sort of a dumb, I just finished my CE for managing broker, literally at 11 p.m. The night it was due. Thank you very much. And to hear that, you know, Stephen, you made a great point earlier that, you know, you can't, it has to be fair. It has to be on the PLN. Everyone has to have equal access to it. But the funny thing is fair housing doesn't have anything to do with being a realtor, but the MLS does. So the truth is, if you're a real estate agent, non-realtor, I mean, none of us here are that, but if you were, you actually don't have access to that data because you're not. And so I'd be curious. I mean, this is probably a little bit too philosophical, but it's like, what does the future hold? Because there is, I mean, we don't generally work with those people. I mean, this community of agents is almost always realtors, but I'm sure all of us on here have run into deals where somebody had their Illinois license, but wasn't a realtor. I mean, I've run into it a couple times. It makes me wonder what the future of the PLN is, because it does feel a bit feudal. And is it really available to everybody? It's not technically. It's only available to realtors.
Correct.
Sorry, that's a big matzo ball. I was just sort of waxing.
No, and I appreciate the clarification. You're absolutely correct.
I don't know. Justin, you're an attorney. I mean, the answer to this could certainly be no, but has there been any situations where you saw anything problematic with stuff that sold sort of pre-market, or maybe where, I don't know, it was pre-market and a realtor had both sides of it, or anything like that, just from a legal perspective?
I don't necessarily think I've come across anything from a legal perspective. Like, I guess, is there some sort of an issue with private versus the MLS? I mean, one thing I have noticed with the PLN listings, if we have a transaction on the seller side and there's less people lined up that had interest in that listing, you get to the inspection negotiations and I mean, let's say that one buyer you have does come through and they tend to be that buyer that goes down to AA, BB, CC, and you're trying to talk with your client and, all right, well, how much interest was there in this? If we, you know, in collaboration with the agent, if we take this back to market, how quickly are you going to be able to get it back under contract? And if there's less nibbles, it's harder to say how hard we can push back on that negotiation. That's, from my perspective, that's the main disadvantage I've seen over the past year or so, as this has become more prevalent.
You know, I think one of the advantages, and Danielle mentioned it, and that was during COVID, especially when, you know, it was raging last year, was to limit the amount of showings. And I think that makes sense. But anytime I hear something like that, I'm like, okay, what does limit mean? And I've never had somebody say no to a showing in private listing. And now, of course, we're coming out of COVID and everybody has their own sensitivity thing, which is, you know, we all have a lot to manage as it is without figuring out everyone's COVID sensitivity. I almost want people to wear a badge. You know, 10 is don't get within 30 miles of me. And 1 is I don't wear a mask anywhere. All right. And then it's also changing, right? And it's almost like it's a first date question. Hey, what's your COVID sensibility? And then did it change from last week? All right, now I'm on the way to the coffee store in the morning with the dog. I'm like, why am I wearing a mask outside? I'm free, I'm vaccinated, you know? And so, you know, maybe that's less important now. I do think that private network, I've sort of been just informally tracking in some of the areas that I really specialize, the amount of listings. And I think since MRED changed the search capability, I watched this wave come off of private network.
Great.
And the question is why? Because it's more easily searchable and we can share it more easy and we can set up searches for our clients and there are many more appointments. And so then maybe people that really utilized it have said, okay, fine, you got me. Let's move it over to the regular market.
Well, I mean, a lot of the listings that we do put on private is really because of what's going on with the listing. It's because they're not ready to hit the MLS, and I don't want to hit anything in the MLS and start my market time until my property is 100% perfect. So if it's not perfect, I don't mind to put it on the private MLS and test the market and see if they can get something in the meantime, and great, good for them. But I don't want to put something, you know, and if I have 2 or 3 weeks and I know the market's good, why would I not, you know? That's my thought process on it.
But if it's not ready, I mean, when you're putting it on private network, you're doing showings, right?
Yeah, we do showings, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I wrestle with. I just,
It's like going on a first date while you're in the bathroom getting ready.
yeah. I mean, I get that there's different strategies out there and everything. You know, I like the ones that say, well, we're finishing painting, it'll be available for showings in 3 weeks. And that's when I might use a private network just to get people like, okay, this is going to come, and oh, let me know when it's ready for showings. But if it's showable, the difference between private market and regular MLS is so minimal. It's just not.
No, because like I may go in and take my own set of pictures beforehand that are not good pictures. I mean, I'll be honest with you, but I can't help it if someone wants to still come in and buy the property on the private MLS. They're entitled to that. But I'm not going to hit the MLS with these pictures or with my work not being 100%, because not only is it not good for my seller, but it's not good for me. Like, I don't want my personal product to look like that and who I represent. I want to have, this is why we do what we do. So I want everything to be 100% perfect. But that's also why I give them the option of whether they want to list privately or not. And I give them the pros and cons, and I let them make the decision. But I still think on some of the private stuff that we've listed, the price per square foot for some of the product we've got has been some of the highest, even on comps that have went directly to market that are the same thing, that have had multiple offers. The other thing I will say too is, while multiple offers seem like the best thing you could possibly get, there are a lot of sellers that are uncomfortable with multiple offer scenarios. Okay, they actually don't really feel great about it. I think when you're looking at 10 offers as a seller and you're not in this industry, sometimes that's not the best case for you. Sometimes when people have so many offers, you know, people are putting in over. That's why you're getting inspection lists with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because there's a certain amount of buyer's remorse that comes along with this. So these are all different strategies and different things that you have to take into consider when we're talking about this as a whole. So, and that's what you have to explain to your client. And that's, you know, basically what it is. Now, in regards, I think too, of saying like, oh, we don't know how many showings we could get if this falls through an inspection. As an agent, as a sales agent, I think you probably do know how active the property should be. And I think you're probably pretty confident when you're discussing this with your client. You should be able to. You should be able to say like, hey, you know what, this is too much. Let's either cut it here, cut our losses and go back on the market. And you should have a level of confidence and give them a level of percentile of what your chances are of getting an offer at the same price that they have, above or under, and what that can look like. So, I mean, that's personally how I feel about it. Granted, once again, I do more sell side. So I think that it's definitely, for what we do, it works better. But I understand it, because like I have a ton of people on the team that do buy side, and they are like, they have buyers calling them like, how did I not see this listing? How is it already under contract? But also, we all know, like, you can put something on the market and 4 hours later, you can be off the market. So, I mean, you know, I think it's unfortunate, you know, with these situations, because I don't think there's like a right or wrong, really.
I want to echo something, Danielle, that you said. The you know, the multiple offers, I mean, is probably generally good, but your typical consumer doesn't understand that if you get 6 or 7 offers, I think everyone on here would agree with this, that what we're really looking for is the person that's actually going to follow through, not the one who is so desperate to get accepted. One of the pitches for the PLN that I've given to clients, and I want to sort of let Stephen de-cringe from me saying that I'm pitching the PLN. I'm not really pitching it.
Oh, you should.
But let's think of it this way, right? I've talked to clients about it like this. We all know on this call, I think, that deals feel like they fall apart a little bit more than they used to, right? Actually, I track this, and I have for years. I went from a 3% of my deals fall apart to about double, 2.5 times that in the last couple of years. Now, that's still not like 3 out of 4 deals are falling apart, but I mean, we're approaching 1 out of 10. And that's a concern. And I hate that. And my clients do too. We all know the stress that comes associated with that. One of the things I like, if you do sell it, again, with the blessing of your client, is, okay, we have a product that there's not a lot of. We're going to test the price a little bit higher than we would have. Somebody comes in, gives you a full price offer, and you feel good about it. I always say to my clients, if you take this and shut the door, no one else got to see this. All that steam that's built up in the market that has the desire for a property like this is remaining in the market. If this deal falls apart, this deal that you already feel great about, and we do end up having to go back to market, we don't have to worry about the likelihood because no one else has really seen this yet, or very few people have seen it. Just the very, very most motivated psychopaths that are sitting around 24 hours a day watching the PLN, right? Which is who we want to buy the property, the most committed, right? And I do love in situations where, and it's happened before, where we had to go back to market after accepting a pre-market offer, and it was like we never went to market, which was great. But if you go to market, you burn that whole weekend off, you get 10 dummies that write you crappy offers, you weed through them, you pick the one that you think is going to follow through, and then they don't. We all know that those other 9 people aren't coming back. Generally speaking, we all have a story of where one of them did. I do too. But generally speaking, those people are gone. And I love that, like, if you're super committed, watch the PLN, here's my thing, you can buy it, my client will sell it, and God forbid if it falls apart, we can go straight back to market and no one ever saw it. So that's the one thing that I've found so far that I like about the PLN is I get to sort of cut out those crappy offers that come flying in because people are just, oh, I've lost 6. And but that's the other thing. Forgive my editorial really quick. When somebody's like, I've lost out on 10 places, I'm like, get a new agent.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, that's never had. I don't think I've ever had a client lose more than 1. And I like can't sleep that night when it happens. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying it has, you know, everybody has their own thing, but I do love, if we can lock it down nice and easy, let's lock it down nice and easy. And if my clients are down with it, then we have all that steam left in the market that we can go back to. Sorry for being long-winded, but that's my take on it.
Just to piggyback on Danielle's point, yeah, because I utilize the PLN on kind of like, you know, it's a case-by-case basis. You don't just put, you know, you need to analyze your client's needs and what they're looking for. But whenever I have a listing that I'm putting on there today where my sellers, it's tenant occupied, they need to repair some hardwood flooring and they need to paint before we are ready for public viewings. However, we have some photos that both I took and my seller took that aren't, you know, some of them look like they were taken on a BlackBerry from 2005. They're grainy, they're not great. But my seller said, if somebody is interested and gives us an offer that we're happy with before we even go on the market, we're happy to do that. So we don't have to invest a couple grand into painting and flooring and that sort of thing. So it's definitely, it's really, you just got to analyze your client's needs and what they're looking for. And again, you know, to your point, Phil, I've had my attorney has been kind of like he's kind of like my corner man in boxing this year, because I've had more cancellations this year, and it's only May, than I have the last 2 years combined, because there's multiple offer situations. They do fuel buyer's remorse, and they do, you know, people, once they get to, you know, that they go through all that, they're in that kind of like casino mindset where they get in these multiple offer situations and they're just like, you know, throwing money down and they're not thinking about it. And then when it comes to the inspection, they're spending a lot of time in the home and they're like, oh, maybe this isn't what I thought it was.
Yep.
So yeah, there's, you know, I just think it really just comes down to analyzing your client's situation, their needs, their wants. And really, I also really like the fact that if you do get an offer off market, and it does fall apart, it's like, okay, that was a nice test run. Now, when we go on the market, we can see, you know, what the market, how the market's going to respond.
Question, Michelle, from a lender perspective, any implications, or have you heard of anything from a lending standpoint from clients, plus or minus, about this topic?
Yeah, this has been great to just take in, you know, your feedback. So obviously I'm only dealing with the buyer side, right? And so I've got a really interesting vantage point, I'm now licensed in 40 states, and primarily because a lot of my clients were leaving and going to other states. So I've not only been able to see locally what's happening, but nationwide. And, you know, I have a lot of, I said, I've never felt, you know, I feel like I'm a life transition manager, you know, a lot of coaching because it's stressful. I mean, when they're in markets, I mean, we have very neighborhood centric, you know, there's certain pockets that are more in a frenzy than others. Able to see locally what's happening. You know, I think a lot from a buyer standpoint, a lot of my buyers that have been looking at really tough spots, you know, they have missed out. Where it comes, where it's interesting for me, so I did about 600 transactions, helped about 600 families last year, and I maybe had 3 appraisal issues. I mean, rarely had an appraisal issue. I've had more appraisal questions come back where I've had to do some rebuttals this first quarter than I have all last year. And I think a lot of it is a lot of these homes are because there's no data on the MLS when the appraiser. So first of all, we know there's like a shortage of appraisers in Chicagoland right now. I mean, it's like we're paying them so much more just to put our orders on the top of the list. And they're busy, you know, and if there's not the data on the MLS, I feel like, and we know we're pressing the top of the market, especially in, I mean, I've seen more escalation clauses in this first quarter of this year than I have in my entire career. I mean, it's not so crazy. Like, I'm like, oh my heavens, you know, because part of it is, and then I have to go back and have the conversation with the client on setting expectations. This may not appraise out, you know, like, so let's look at what does this look like? You know, if we have to pay, if we're 20, we come in 25 under, you know, on a $700,000 house or something. So just a lot of interesting questions, a lot of setting expectation for what could be so that they don't, because like you said, a lot of clients will have buyer's remorse and then pull out. So it's almost prepping them in advance. I would just say in general, I feel that, you know, from the buyer standpoint, maybe the private listing network could be an advantage only in that they don't feel like they're in such a feeding frenzy. Maybe they're competing with 3 offers instead of 20, you know, just depending on where the market is. So that would be potentially one advantage. But where I feel the most challenge probably is with the appraisals. If it's off market, if we're pressing the top of the market, there really are no comps because we're creating, you know, we're going up and up. And that's where I feel, you know, where I've had to put on my boxing gloves more than ever and really rebuttal some of the appraisals. So that's kind of it. But it's really interesting. I'm really appreciative of this feedback because I really didn't understand it. Like, I thought it was you had to pay in I didn't know that everyone had access. So that's really good and helpful information.
Do you, Michelle, I was going to ask about appraisals. Are you seeing appraisal issues? Because the thing that's shocked me this year is I've had 6 or 7 things where they were like, nah, it's good. They didn't even send an appraiser. And it has shocked me.
Say that one more time. Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Have you seen appraisal issues tick up, or is it about the same as it's been in the past? Because I've been surprised at how lax banks have been with some of my deals this year. In 6 or 7 cases, not even sending appraisers.
It hasn't been, I mean, I have to think of it collectively because, again, I'm dealing with some markets like Texas and Nashville and Florida. I mean, it's crazy town. Like, so, you know, maybe I'm feeling a little bit more in external markets. I still even feel like locally, you know, I do feel like that we're getting a little bit more just because lack of data. I mean, like I said, like, I think appraisers, I don't want to call them lazy. I'll just call them overworked. So they're cutting corners where they can. Yeah. So they may not try as hard. So I just feel like more than ever, when I know something's pushing top end of the market, I'm like calling the listing agent being like, don't send your assistant, you know, like, you show up, tell them the comps, you know, please hand them the comps, you know, that you want them to, you know, just, you know, make their life easier. Right. So I think that's my best coaching advice when I know that it's pushing the upper end of the market, to just make sure that, because that's happened so many times. Like, I had one and I'm like, are you kidding me? You sent your assistant, you know, this is a, you know, $1.5 million listing, you know? So anyway, that's I think my biggest thing would be to just prep and make their job as easy as possible.
You're muted.
So. No mute.
Right.
Michelle, I feel horrible. I'm sending my assistant to an appraisal at noon.
What?
But I will say I prepped that packet yesterday.
I've seen more
I like-
drive-bys lately than I have since the boom. And yeah, it's interesting, but knock on wood, very few issues. And, you know, I think that close comparables are good, but for some people, they just don't understand. Sale is over. If you can't buy it at that price, you know, you don't stand at a store and complain about not getting a sale item from a week ago.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I think that some people need to snap, both agents and appraisers need to a little dose of reality. You know, there's 2 properties out there. What are you going to do? You're not going to force me down $20,000 just because you didn't buy 2 weeks ago.
And I tell that to clients as well. Like when you're buying in an appreciating market, the idea is you're paying more than the last comp. I think you just need to be looking at the trends and seeing how much things are appreciating on like a quarterly basis to gauge where things will be at by the time it closes, just to make sure that you're not like completely overpaying.
And, you know, here's the thing, like I'm an advocate for obvious reasons of Chicago market. We've had some pretty stinky appreciation since the bust. I mean, I'm not talking about all market segments, but for instance, I'm doing a deal right now at Park Place. And, you know, they've owned it for 10 years and it's still selling below the 10-year price. And I'm like, yes, and you're going to complain about this? But, you know, now is finally sellers have been beaten the last 10 years. And so hooray, they can finally join the, you know, the party of some asset appreciation where we've all gained on so many other things like the stock market, and real estate has just been limping along. So, you know, it's finally good to see that going up because of course, Chicago is a phenomenal bargain compared to every other major city in the country. Why don't people get this?
Yeah, I lived in California for 4 years, and I moved out to California in August of 2008, right when literally I was in my dad's living room when Lehman Brothers folded. And when I lived out there, I worked for a small real estate mortgage company doing foreclosures and REOs and that sort of thing. And I always liken markets like San Francisco, New York, and LA and Miami to Ferraris, and Chicago's like a Honda Civic. It's like, it's not very exciting, not very flashy, but it's reliable, it's steady. You know, the highs aren't really high, the lows aren't really low.
We need a good PR person.
Yeah.
Or a Honda Pilot in my case, with as many kids as I have. Sorry, that was my zinger for the.
No, I think
session. Continue.
You know, sort of looking at the PLN discussion, my frustration has gone down for me personally since I can search on it and set up client searches, so it's fine. But you know, in listening to opinions and all that's cool, I think PLN is just another tool like Show Assist or any of the other like it. I just have a hard time when people want to be texting for showing. Sorry, this is my opinion. Why everyone's not on Show Assist, I don't get it because it's so simple. And I've got to text in like what the name of my firstborn is to show a property. And so it's just a tool that we're using. And, you know, when you look at PLN, or I'm just going to use Show Assist since that's on the top of my radar screen this morning, you know, there you can look through PLN and there's agents that, you know, are more use it more than others. And, you know, I hear the reasons and, you know, we're never going to talk each other out of it. It's just to gain more of an understanding. I personally, like I said before, I'm just thankful that I can search on it a little bit easier and I don't have to jack around downloading pictures.
So I feel like the PLN just gained popularity a little bit because it was like something new and shiny and it was a value proposition. So you had
like you in your 20s.
Well, like buyer agents were talking to buyers saying like, hey, I have this new tool, choose me, date me. And then in turn, they're taking their own listings and kind of feeding into their own value proposition. I feel like since MRED did make that change, it has diminished. It is not as prevalent. What I'm seeing and what I'm enjoying is people putting listings on because a lot of individuals are working from home still. They're putting listings on and then saying like no showings until open house per seller's direction. And then you have like a full week where all eyes are on you. And then on the weekend, you have that lineup of showings and then you're choosing your offer by like Monday morning. Like that's like the path I think that is probably the most seamless that I would like to see experienced for not only my buyer, but also my seller.
How about a little
Okay.
switch in topic? I don't know how much time we have, but I'm hearing a lot of people being called back to work downtown.
Yeah.
Well, let's pause that thought. Back to work downtown. I need a screenshot of everybody smiling. This may or may not be in the next issue of RP or a future issue. Probably won't be the next one. Hold on. Now, I will frame it like this. Do not be like my children and smile for 2 seconds and then stop. So when you see me stop smiling, then you stop smiling. Yes, thank you, Phil. Phil just gets me. He understands me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, hold on. I think we actually know we got to do one more, and I got to do one with the mug. Okay, hold on. My shortcut on my keyboard's not working. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I think
Did it.
we nailed it. And then, but yeah, no, that's perfect. And we're like, yeah, 3-4 minutes out. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So let's try to listen to that. Going to back to work downtown, and then yeah, we got like 5 minutes. So
I'm hearing a
let's
lot
wrap
about
about
it. Like JP Morgan has called people into Chase Tower starting next week, not on a full-time schedule, modified until September. And now I'm seeing a lot more movement in some of the dogs, namely high rises downtown, studios and 1 bedrooms.
I'm seeing a ton of movement downtown. So a lot of my clients in high rises, they're heading back downtown, but I've got a lot of young new buyers back in that condo market downtown proper because they're going back to work, or at least foreseeable at the end of the year. So they're just getting ready.
I think it's laughable how some people say, oh, downtown is going to be like Detroit, and not just Chicago, all cities. Same with New York. I'm like, oh, come on, stop, get off of Facebook.
Yeah, people have the memory of a goldfish. You know, hopefully by this time next year, we'll not even be thinking about COVID anymore, but who knows? But I agree, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good stopping point. I mean, I'm cool with that. We can just close it out with that. I mean, we can filibuster for a few minutes, but you know, you guys have money to make and stuff to do. So
You got to go out on top, Andy. You know how to do it.
yeah, that's right.
Go
So
out
just
on a
drop-
high note.
I need Steven, there you go. Virtual microphone, drop it. I wish I had like a microphone emoji. I could just drop it and then leave it. But seriously, this was great. And I think it shed a lot of insight. And I mean, agents, partners, like, I just want to thank you guys for engaging with me and just with our platform. And I mean, it means a lot to me just for you guys to carve an hour out during a freaking insane market with your busy schedules. Mark, great topic. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we unpack everything. Maybe we should do this again, round 2 in a couple weeks. We'll try to set that up real quick. Wink, wink. But no, I appreciate everybody's time. I think it's a good thing if we're off at 2 minutes early. So I'm going to cut the live feeds. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Live stream is stopped. You guys know the drill. If you want to do this again, a few months, get different agents, partners on. And Mark, I like the idea of just doing certain topics. So if anybody has a discussion point, somebody wants to dive into.
Yeah, how about
what's that?
all the people that don't use showing time on and find out why?
Say it again.
I do not use showing time.
You
Wow. Oh, wow. Can we do another hour? And it's just Mark versus Danielle.
Danielle Dowell, and we'll do like some boxing gloves. You know, I already got I can have my graphics team.
I feel like I may be doing all of this backwards right now.
No, but hey,
Keep going.
this was fun. I will send out everybody's email addresses with their info, and then I mean, we actually have a really good appraiser, so I can connect everybody individually with them. I won't put them on the group feed, but you guys know the drill. If there's something you want to dive into, lean on us as a resource. We're here for you.
How about leaving toilet lids open for pictures and showings?
I think I'm just going to cut the Zoom off right there, Mark.
I
I
don't
think
get
Mark
it.
should make a list of pet peeves, and then we should just do a special one on just those. That would be great.
I would watch that.
Wait, should they be up or down? This is one I don't know.
Oh my God.
I
any
mean,
question about that?
Down.
I'm all about shameless
Down?
fun humor. You know that.
So does the toilet paper roll need to come from underneath or over top?
Great question.
Yep.
Over top. Come on.
These are life shattering, questions that bear the eternity, hinges on right here, right?
Andy, on a serious note though, I like the one topic because I think we did so many jam sessions that were just like the state of real estate with COVID. And now it's really like, this felt very educational. So I think for us, for anyone watching, to really dive into specific areas and amp up that education level, I think it's a huge value add.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I
like the single topic too.
I'm game. You guys know me. I'm game for whatever, and then I can have agents who are kind of more or less. I don't know if you want to call it experts, but could then shed more insight on that specific topic and unpack it more. I'm cool with I'm easy. So awesome. Well, hey everybody, I appreciate it. It's 10:15. You guys get back to your days.
Rocking, guys. See you
Have a good
soon.
day.
See you in Facebook world.
Bye.
Peace.